Good
floor is
morning.
yours.
Okay, are we ready? I think we are, huh? Okay. Anyway, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Behavioral Sciences Policy and Advocacy Committee meeting. Today is August 8th, 2021, and the time now is 9 a.m. and we are meeting on the WebEx platform in pursuant to the executive order by the governor N2520. So at this time, I would like to have Christina to establish a quorum.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Christina Wong.
Here.
Max Disposti.
I'm here.
John Sovek.
Present.
Wendy Strack.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And so our next agenda item is to introduce ourselves. So I'll call your name and would you please tell us who you are. And so I'm Christina Wong. I'm an LCSW member and the chair of this meeting. And the next, Max, please.
Hi there. Good morning. Max Disposti, public member and BBS board chair. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Good morning, John Sovek, licensed marriage and family therapist, and my pronouns are he, him.
Thank you. And Wendy.
Wendy Strack and public member.
Thank you. And now our staff, Steve.
Hi, Steve Sodergren, Executive Officer of the Board. Morning.
Good morning. Roseanne.
Hi, Roseanne Helms, Legislative Manager for the board.
Thank you. Christy.
Hi, good morning. Christy Berger, Regulatory Analyst for the board.
Thank you. And Christina, I saw your video on.
Christina Kitamura, Administrative Analyst for the board, and I need coffee. Good morning.
Yes, we all do. Thank you. And Sabina.
Good morning, Sabina Knight, Legal Counsel for the board.
Thank you very much. So at this time, and we also have our moderator and our video camera person, very important to make this meeting, be able to live cast. So now we're going to move to our next agenda item, which is the consent calendar. And it is about the approval of April 16, 2021 committee meeting minutes. So any discussion? Hearing none. So let's have a motion, and then we're going to open to the public, for the, for any other discussion, so we can actually speed up the process. So can I have a motion? I'll make a motion to approve the April 16, 2021 committee meeting minutes. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
You guys decide.
Wendy, go ahead.
I was going to say you could have it, but
Go.
All right. Okay, Wendy second. So let's open, moderator, would you please open the Q&A panel and also explain to the public about the public comments section.
Of course, this is the moderator, and for public comment today, we will be utilizing two features in WebEx. You have the option of using the question and answer feature, which you will be searching for the Q&A icon on your screen that looks like a question mark inside of a square. Click on that. It should open a text box. In that text box, you can simply type comment and send that to all panelists. You also have the ability to use the raised hand feature. As many of you may notice, WebEx looks a little different. We are in a new upgraded WebEx environment. And now you may locate your hand, the little hand icon next to your name. So if you hover your mouse over your name, the little hand icon will appear. You can click it to raise your hand and then click it again to lower your hand.
Doesn't seem anybody has a question.
I do have one.
Okay.
J. Alley So another new feature of WebEx is when instead of me being able to unmute your microphone, when I go to unmute your microphone, you will get an indicator at your end that says you have the ability to unmute yourself. You will want to click on the button that pops up that says unmute me, and then that will unmute your microphone. And then I would caution just to give it a brief second after you click that button, it will play a brief statement and then you can begin speaking. If you begin speaking too soon, it'll cut off the beginning of your statement. So Jay Alley, I've sent you the request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning, this is Jen. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes, we can.
Quick question, I had to step away from my computer. So sorry. Is this for items not on the agenda or is this for your minutes?
It's for the
Minutes.
minute.
No comment. Thank you. Sorry.
No
No problem.
problem. All right. So thanks, Jen. So we will just, in that sense, I think we can close the public comment section. Thanks, moderator. And I think we can vote.
Okay, Max Disposti,
Yes.
John Sovic,
Abstain.
okay. Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Christina Wong,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you very much. Then we will be moving to item number 4, and it's the discussion and possible recommendation regarding 3 hours California law and ethics continuing education course requirement for all associate each renewal cycle. So Roseanne, please take it away.
Yes, so this agenda item comes out of the licensing committee. It's, I think, the first item to come out of that committee, and it started with a discussion about the 12-hour required California law and ethics course for applicants who attempted the California law and ethics exam during their renewal cycle but did not pass it. So currently, a registrant has to attempt the L&E exam, the California law and ethics exam, every registration cycle until it's passed. If they don't pass it by their renewal, then they're still permitted to renew, but then in order to take it again and then take the exam again in the next renewal cycle, they need to take a 12-hour California law and ethics course. And the timing of that can be kind of problematic for a number of different reasons. There's a lot of people who don't realize they need to take the course or forget to take the course or not sure when they're supposed to take the course in order to be able to continue on to gain their hours. So the discussion started there and whether we wanted to change the timing of when that course is required. And it kind of evolved into a discussion about law and ethics in general and registrants. So the licensing committee directed staff to draft language ultimately deleting the 12-hour California law and ethics course requirement for those that failed the exam, and instead to require all registrants, regardless of whether they've passed the California law and ethics exam or not, to complete a 3-hour California law and ethics course in each renewal cycle. And so that language you see as proposed language today, It's affects several sections. You can see in the language that the 12-hour California law and ethics course requirement is being removed for people who failed the exam. And then there's some language in the CE statute and in the law and ethics exam statute talking about the 3-hour course. This proposed language only includes statute. We would also need to do some cleanup to our regulations if the board decided to pursue legislation for this. So we would need to do that separately if the bill looked like it was going to become successful. So in addition to discussing the proposed language and what everybody thinks about it, the committee might also want to discuss whether the language needs a delayed implementation or not. Assuming that this language is successful, and this is a big what if, but if it was successful, there was no delays, best case scenario, we would start running a bill this coming January 2022. A bill would, if it was signed, it would be signed by the governor around September 2022, and then it would become effective on January 1, 2023. So there would be about a 3-month advance notice for registrants they were going to need to take this 3-hour course in order to renew if their renewal was in January. Alternatively, if the committee believes that more time is needed or more advance notice is needed, it could set a 6-month or a 1-year delayed implementation as well. So the task for today is to review the proposed language and discuss it and discuss if delayed implementation is needed.
Thank you, Roseanne. This is a really wonderful capture, of the evolution, why we have this change. And also, some of the important points for us to consider. Also, the most important thing is to bear in mind, about the legislative cycle, because we do have to have, some language being in place, otherwise, it would be probably, it would be, really, really late, or maybe delay for, a few years before, the implementation. And so, so I'm going to open up for the board members, to give any feedback and, just to see, what they, what, any comments about the language, that is being, provided by Roseanne. So I personally like the fact that, we have a very broad, actually, I like the language and I do not think that the delayed implementation should happen. And so that's my very straightforward 2 cents. So board members, any feedback, comments? You all like the language? John, go ahead.
I'm also in agreement. I think the language is nice. I think it's actually very clear, and I think it does kind of close up potential loopholes in the way we were approaching it before. I also think this language might be really valuable in also filling in some of those gaps of people doing things not always above board when they're in that process of going through it, either because a supervisor leads them astray or they get in situations that they don't really remind themselves of their law and ethics. Because if we only do the law and ethics that one time at the beginning, I think people are losing track. So with this language, which means every time of these extended renewal periods, they're being reminded of their legal and ethical duties. So I think the language is really clear, and I really support where we're heading with this.
Thank you, John. And I think, when we proposed this language, when we discussed in the meeting last time, one of the benefit is actually the fact that, for down the road, when the registrant is licensed, they have to take, the similar, that 6 hours law and ethics, for every renewal period. So it just makes it absolutely consistent, so they will be taking 3 hours, every year, until they're licensed, and then it will be 6 hours for every biannual renewal. So it's actually a really great thing that, like John said, the reminder, of, they have to practice, law lawfully and ethically. So thank you. So Wendy or Max, any comments?
It seems to reflect the discussion that we've had so far. So I really like it. Thank you, Roseanne, for all your work on this.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Likewise. Sorry, Christina, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I have some return. I think I'm like 2 seconds behind for some reason. I need to figure that out. But I'm in agreement. As for anything that brings change, obviously implementation is always very delicate, right? So I think we need to make sure that we follow through the implementations and we don't leave people behind in terms of communications to our licensee or associates of the deadlines. So because I know every time we do something like that at the beginning, there is always a gap. So hopefully we can do a good job in making sure that the implementation is it's made aware to all our associates.
Yes. Thank you very much. So it looks like let's see. I'm thinking that I want to hear from the public, and so maybe we will open up from the Q&A panel. Moderator, please.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel, and the hand raise feature is also available. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, for the Q&A panel, click on that Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text box, and submit that to the panelists. And to raise your hand, you can find the hand icon next to your name. First comment comes from Jen Alley. Jen, you may unmute your microphone.
Good morning. This is Jen Alley with Camped. So we have a little bit, excuse me, some little bit of a conflict internally about this. While we appreciate aligning the associate's CE requirement with licensed individuals, we do have some costs regarding concern with some of the associates who may be working as volunteers to be able to cover the additional cost associated with the new CE requirement. And so we talked about it internally, and we kind of reflected on the fact that the associates are working under supervision with licensed individuals that should be current and are current with the continuing education requirements. And so we had talked about possibly requiring a continuing ed course with the associate registration number, and maybe aligning a new course with that, because we don't want to go multiple years without an update, but at the same time we don't want to burden them with an ongoing CE requirement while they're in process of getting their hours. And so we thought maybe that might be a little bit more of a balance, since they are working under constant supervision by a licensed professional. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Jen. Any other comments?
Yes, next comment comes from Rebecca Gonzalez. Rebecca, you may unmute your line.
Rebecca Gonzalez. Sorry, Rebecca Gonzalez, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. Thank you for inviting us to comment, and I apologize that I missed the last licensing meeting. We discussed this proposal in our office, and we were also very concerned about the cost. ASWs are usually, people who are pre-licensure are usually in a more precarious financial situation. And with the fees that were recently raised, I think there might be a real sensitivity here. I think, interested in Jen's comments, I probably would want to reflect on that more and talk to our association, but we definitely had concerns about this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Definitely, the cost is, certainly a big concern, and yet when we look at, what we used to do, that the cost is even more, because, if we stick back to, our old proposal, the idea is for them to take a 12 units of the law and ethic class when they don't pass the examination. And so that's one piece that I want to, just, bring the attention to the associations. And also the other thing, I think, Roseanne, also did a really good job in providing the attachment B, which is the passing rate. And so, so we see that actually, I think the school did a really wonderful job. That, most of the, I would say that, when I look at like the first taker, actually over the years, it's very consistent that, over 80, close to 90%, like 2021, that 94% of the people, have passed the test within 1 year or second year. And I think this is a really good data, to really look at, what will be the cost like, so if you don't pass 12 units, and if if they, renew every year, that would be probably majority of the people will be probably burdening with 6 units. So, I think this is definitely a balancing act. So the other thing that I also want association to consider, is that, I think, one of the jobs for the association is really to provide, the continuing education. Maybe this is actually, a really good chance, to think about like, any chance that you guys can support them. And I know that, there are some websites out there, they can, have free CEUs. So I think, that would be also, multiple parts that we can, see how we can support, the associates who don't pass the exam, and yet also for us to achieve the public protection mission. So that's my comments, very lengthy, my apology. So I'm going to open back up for the board members. So any other comment, feedbacks?
Madam Chair, we have one more public comment.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I know it used to show you at the bottom of your list when someone was waiting, and it no longer does. So
Yeah.
it's solely on me now.
Okay.
Our next comment comes from Benjamin Caldwell. Benjamin, you may unmute your line.
Everyone, I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
We can.
And Christina, I understand if you thought, well, I just really don't want to hear from Ben on this one.
No, I always like to hear from Ben.
Ben Caldwell, LMFT, and I am in support of this proposal. Certainly am sensitive to the cost concerns that my colleagues have raised, but I would also reinforce what Ms. Wong is saying, in that, you know, as it is right now for people who fail the exam and need to take that 12-hour course, first of all, not everybody understands the timing considerations about when they do and don't need to take the 12-hour course, but that causes problems on its own. But secondly, I'm not aware of any providers that are offering that 12-hour CE course for free. So when we're thinking of cost considerations, that's a significant cost for the people who need to take it. Whereas the company that I work for, Simple Practice Learning, in addition to several other providers, do offer shorter ethics courses at no cost for participants. We right now have two 1-hour ethics courses available for free on our platform, and I'm sure if this becomes law that we would expand those offerings. I'm sure others would do the same. So while I can appreciate the cost concern, I think that the policy impact here is meaningful and kind of is enough to outweigh that cost consideration that I think would be alleviated just by market pressures. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. This is why I love hearing from you. So wonderful. You know, and this is actually a very all-rounded discussion, because I think this is also, you know, a very important consideration and advocacy, you know, for those who don't pass the exam. And it is a burden. And yet, you know, I think, you know, we have to also understand, it's like, why is that they don't pass the exam? This is like the fundamental, you know, for them, you know, to practice. And so I think this is, you know, very important for the board members to, you know, to really look at, you know, not just about the idea, but also about the language, you know, whether we can support that. So John, go ahead.
Well, and I think when it comes to the cost piece too, when we look at the public benefit of this, I don't think it's too much to ask someone who's moving into our profession to spend $30 to $50 every few years on a renewal period to look at keeping themselves updated on this information. You know, I know a lot of trainees and associates who are taking, you know, more advanced trauma courses. They're trying to increase their thing of working with certain populations. I think ultimately for us to be taking this step to put out people that are going to every renewal period, get reminded of their ethical and legal standards, actually creates a huge safety benefit. And that if this is put out and it's consistent policy every renewal period, then I as a person can plan for that. I mean, I do it financial with my own CEUs as a licensed person. I know I have to take a certain number every time I renew. And so I plan financially for that and, you know, put it into my budget. And I think the benefits far outweigh what we're talking to be a very nominal cost if it's so organized that it says when you renew, this has to happen. Okay, cool. I need to save the $30 to $50 to take those 3 units. Off we go. So I think the benefits far outweigh this cost risk that we're addressing right now.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, you know, so at this point, you know, any other board members' comments?
Well, Christina, that was going to be my question, because as a public member, I wasn't really aware about the cost associated with, I had an idea, but I wasn't, you know, if John numbers reflect the reality of what he's just shared. I concur with the analysis that was done in regards to risks versus cost as well. So yeah, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, so, so for the current, cost and, I think, for the associate, who like to drink coffee like me, maybe instead of going out to get coffee, they need to make, home coffee for 10 days and there's your cover, for,
Well,
yeah.
Christina, I just want to add, if you don't mind,
Yes.
I also would like to share, obviously understanding the sentiment of what's going on, because all of this is happening in a storm, right? That has to do with interns not associates not getting paid properly or at all, having to sacrifice, juggle between work and survival needs. So everything really counts. So I understand. Excuse me, I don't know what's going on with my voice today, but I understand the concern, because it's not just the $50. While I share the needs to do that, but also I think we have to find a way in the wording, like Roseanne did, also to understand that this is happening in a moment in a time where people feel really overwhelmed. And as we know, there is a concern from the BBS about the fact that more and more our licensees don't look like the population we serve, because there are a lot of financial barriers. So we need to definitely always, I know you're all aware, we all sympathetic, empathic with that. We just want to make sure we continue to have this conversation, because it's definitely a challenge. I just wanted to add that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, Steve, since you're here, and I think, they're probably, the good direction, to talk about that in the strategic planning, because really, the CE requirement, the 3 units is only a very small portion of it. When you look at the totality, of the CEUs, that the associate has to take, this is more. This is actually, this is actually just a part of it. They have to take about like the total about 7 classes altogether before, they get their licensing. Before they're eligible to take their examination. And so, I think the cost is definitely one, but at the same time, I think, again, I want to bring everybody back. It's really about the current, legislation. It is about the 12 units, if they don't pass. Right. And so, and it's causing a lot of issues, for the staff's operation part of it, because if they don't understand, it's just really problematic, like Roseanne said. So I think we have to really balance, where do we, what would be the most important thing, for us? Is it the cost consideration, or is it really about like, that this with the support, for the association and stuff, that, we can actually, implement this legislation and be able to, just help everybody to focus on, the competency, of the registrants, and also about like the consumer protection. And so I think that is all the licensees have to take, law and ethics down the road. Why would, yes, there is the salary consideration, but it is very nominal, for that three hours is very, very nominal. And so, so Roseanne, you got your raised hand, and Steve next.
Yeah,
Roseanne?
I just a couple of points. I didn't cost out what a 3-hour course would be. It's kind of difficult to know because it's not really a 3-hour L&E course right now. But I did cost to the 12-hour course. I found a wide range of prices for the 12-hour course, ranging from about $50 to $135. So that's obviously for 12 hours, though. So that's one piece of information. One other thought that I had is to the 3-hour course might serve as a good refresher. I mean, there will be a cost to people to take that course. Hopefully it will be a lower cost, but it could also, having all registrants take it, it might lead to fewer retakes of the exam for everybody if they took it, which, I mean, it's I believe a couple $100 to retake the exam. So it'll end up saving some people money, likely, but some people that would have passed it the first time, yes, they would have the extra, let's say $50 costs.
Yes.
That's an estimate, but
yes.
So it's kind of shifting who pays. I kind of see it as shifting a little bit.
Yes.
The people that are struggling with the exam would probably pay less money, and some people might not have to. It might avoid having to take the exam again for others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Roseanne. That is a really nice little data, that they ended up, actually saving money instead. Yeah. So,
It's possible.
yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think when we started this whole conversation, really was to, um, make it easier to understand the whole process for registrants and to make it easier for registrants so they didn't have to worry about this 12-hour course. But now I think we recognize that the consumer protection, this would help out. I mean, we have, registrants that go through the process that could have a registration for 6 years or more and not really pay attention to what's going on with the laws and regulations that the board is passing. And so they might lose, they definitely, I think this is a way to get them to notice, that their license is governed by certain laws and regulations. And this kind of would help out in the end because we do reach, sometimes we have a lot of confusion as to, laws that go through and people not being able to actually move forward on their registration or their licensing because they didn't understand that a law change went into effect. So I think in the long run for consumer protection, this is a great idea. We do recognize, I, in fact, Roseanne and I were talking about the cost the other day. I think one of the things that we will put on the strategic plan is looking for ways to possibly even the board possibly sponsoring their own law and ethics presentation that associates could take to almost make it no cost. That's something that we also, I think, will be looking at. Not saying it's going to be implemented next year or the year after, but something that we are going to take under consideration because I do recognize the cost and that it definitely is something that would be of concern to a lot of the registrants out there. But I think overall the benefit outweighs everything. So there's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much from the staff perspective. And John.
And one thing, Steve, also we might consider if this does move through is coordinating with actually the associations that are on today and look if that can actually be a conversation between BBS and the associations to create those free platforms versus any one having to take it on all by themselves. And speaking of that too, I know when we had public comments, there was a talk about, will they get this information in supervision? My experience of most supervisors is they are highly overworked and highly underpaid. And I think to put the burden of the law and ethics stuff, not taking away that they do the day-to-day stuff, but saying, oh, the board just passed this thing. Everybody, you need to know this as my supervisee. I think that's putting a lot of burden on supervisors who are already completely overwhelmed, especially in agency situations.
Yep. Very well, very well. So, and I think that, the acquisition of the knowledge should always be on the registrants, and or the licensee themselves. And I think, the supervision is really about the oversight and stuff. So I think, when you think about establishing a habit, from the very early on, that they have to really pay attention to the law and ethics, which is really the foundation of the practice. And so I think that is, in the long run, I think, that, with multiple options that, that Roseanne and Steve talked about, and I think, we can, definitely, look at how we can also assist, the registrants to, the financial burden part of it. But at the same time, again, I want to just bring it back. It's also, we're talking about a very small number of them, and hopefully, if it's less than 10%, then I think, we need to really think about like, will the benefit, will the burden on that, less than 10% people, outweigh, the benefits of having that requirement, for consumer protection. So, moderator, it looks like, Rebecca has her hands up.
She does. Rebecca, you may now unmute your line.
Thank you, Rebecca Gonzalez, NASW, California. I also just wanted to point out that the 12-hour course was, of course, only to those that didn't pass, and this 3-hour is to everyone. And people who were able to pass the exam, it was, they were rewarded without that extra cost. So, I just wanted to point that out, make sure that everybody completely understands that, and also confusion about the necessity to take the 12-hour course. You know, there could be ways to help with that problem just by the way that it's advertised to people who are in this cycle, doing a better job of getting the word out. So just wanted to make those final comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. So it looks like there was another hand. Jen.
Jen Ellie, you may now unmute your microphone.
Good morning. It's Jennifer Alley with the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists again. And I appreciate the thoughtful discussion that the board is having, and appreciate Becca from NASW, her comments regarding, you know, the 12-hour was only for people who fail. But moving forward with some sort of low cost option for associates to take it, all associates to take it every 3 hours every year. I'm just wondering, will the workshop hours count towards their licensee hours? And are there going to be any necessary changes regarding CE records? I think that, you know, their license or their pre-licensed associate status could be longer than the current requirements for licensed individual, the current requirements for maintaining your CE records, and just wondering, you know, exactly how is that going to roll out? Thank you.
Yeah. So it is, you know, so yep. So this will be, you know, I'm glad that we're starting to think about like the implementation part of it. And so maybe Steve, you know, you or Roseanne, you have any thoughts, you know, in response to Jen's concern?
I don't think we've really talked about whether that would be included in workshop hours. I don't think that was on our mind. As for the retention, that would just be like we normally with every licensee, retain your CE documents for the, you know, the renewal period and after, just to make sure in case you're audited. That would be the issue. So there wouldn't really be much on the retention, but that is a good question you brought up about the workshop hours. Don't know. I haven't thought about that. So thank you.
Roseanne?
Yeah, that's a really great point. So the record retention hours would be the same record retention requirements. But that is a great question about the 3 hours counting toward workshop hours. Interested to hear the board's thoughts on that. It's definitely, it could be an option on the table. You know, those hours are limited. Out of the 3,000, I think it's about 1,200 that can be the non-clinical practice. So yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yes.
Considered.
Well, so yes, Steve.
I mean, that is a good question. But I mean, if you look at it, even if you had your registration for 6 years, you're looking at what, 18 hours. I mean, I think just to keep things simple, not really including that in workshop hours and just leaving it alone, would just add more complication, I think. But I do recognize it would be 18 hours less that, yes, you would have to collect. That's just my thoughts. I would probably not work it into the workshop hours.
Yes.
And Madam Chair, this is the moderator. We have another comment from Ben Caldwell.
Yes, please.
Ben, your line is able to be unmuted.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to point out that under existing law, if somebody takes a workshop, whether it awards CE hours or not, if the supervisor is willing to sign off on it, it can be counted in that non-clinical grouping, the former sort of subgroup of workshops, trainings, and seminars. So it wouldn't require any kind of a change for this 3-hour requirement to still be countable in the non-clinical basket toward licensure. And just as kind of a morality question, I feel like those hours should be countable in the non-clinical bucket, even though, Steve, as you're pointing out, it's a small portion. Thank you.
Yes, Steve.
Thank you for bringing that up, Ben. I just was kind of worried about putting additional regulations and statutes about counting that. But I mean, if that is true, I mean, if the supervisor, I'll have to look at that. But that's a good point. So thank you for raising that.
Ben actually is right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I'm looking at 4980.43, and it says, you know, the 1250 hours of non-clinical practice can be workshops, seminars, training sessions, or conferences. So that would count as a training session, as long as the supervisor, you know, was willing to sign off on it as being. So yeah, I don't actually, now that I think about it a little bit more, I don't think it would be an issue. It would count.
Yes.
Just keeping in mind that they are limited on their 1250 app. I mean, there's a 1250 limit, so as long as they didn't fill that bucket already.
Yeah. So I think I love this. I think this is, you know, a very, very thorough discussion. And so, you know, so this is the PNA meeting. So we will still have the opportunity, you know, to look at it at the full board meeting. And so, you know, so I think for now, you know, I like to, you know, move forward because it looks like we really are, you know, I think we analyze and, you know, have all this discussion with all aspects. And so between now and, you know, whatever the motion is going to be, you know, between now and the next board meeting, you know, if the association has more opinion or, you know, really hear feedback from, you know, from the associates that this is so burdensome, you know, we will have another opportunity, you know, to continue to discuss that. So, so let's, you know, it looks like that we need a motion, you know, for the discussion, you know, and so how about this? I'm going to make a motion to, what would be the motion? Actually, I'm going to make a motion, but Roseanne, you know, about approving the language that you suggested.
If you wanted to approve the language, the motion would be to direct staff to make any non-substantive changes and bring to the board for consideration as a legislative proposal.
So I make that motion. I'm going to move that motion. So any second. John second. Thank you very much. So at this point, I'm gonna, moderator, I'm gonna open up the Q&A and for the for any other public comments or motions.
Okay. And just as a reminder, our Q&A panel is open. You may utilize that by clicking on the Q&A icon and typing comment into the text field. You may also raise your hand, locating the hand icon next to your name. And seeing no additional requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. So I think we're ready to vote. So Christina.
Max Disposti,
Yes.
John Savet,
Yes.
Wendy Strapp,
Yes.
Christina Wong,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you very much. And John?
Roseanne, you had also mentioned something about the timeline was part of how you wanted to be able to talk about this. Can you refresh me on what your thoughts were on that and how when we talk to the full board, we might approach that?
Oh, in terms of the timeline, are you talking about the whether or not we wanted to consider a delayed implementation, John?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the consideration was that the bill, so it would be a bill starting in January if the board decides to move forward with it, and then if everything went smoothly and it was signed, it would be signed in about September 2022. So there'd be about a 3-month lead time before this would be effective basically January 1st. So there'd be like a 3-month time to get the word out so that everybody kind of knew that that it was coming and that they needed to prepare for it. So there definitely is some options. We could have it come into effect January 1st. We could have it come into effect 6 months or a year later down the road.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to know.
Sure, yeah, no problem.
Thank you very much. So as for now, you know, then I think the motion is to vote for, to, you know, basically, you know, if it's passed and signed by the governor, you know, then, you know, it will be implemented as of 2023.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes. So, okay, thank you very much. And so let's move on to the next item. Item number 5, the bill, Assembly Bill 107 by Solace is taken out of the agenda. So we will move to the update on board sponsor and monitor legislation. And Roseanne, please.
Right, yes, this is just the legislative update. One note about AB 107, the board has an oppose unless amended position on that particular bill. I had talked to the author's office. They indicated they might be willing to consider amendments. So I put it on the agenda just in case we saw any amendments. We haven't seen any amendments at this time. The legislature is on break, so I'm going to put it again on the September board meeting, just in case amendments are available to consider. So that's what's going on with AB 107. In terms of a couple of other bills that you might want to be aware of, our practice setting definition bill, AB 690, that provides specific definitions of private practice, professional corporations, and non-exempt settings. That's moving through the legislature nicely. It's at this time cleared all of its committees and it's on second reading in the Senate. So it should just have second reading and third reading to go before it gets enrolled and sent to the governor. So that's where that one is. AB 462, which is CalPIC's bill, removing some of the requirements to removing the requirement to treat couples and families for LPCCs, and also the 150 clinical experience in a hospital or community mental health setting, removing that requirement. That bill is also about in the same place as 690. It's cleared all of its committees and is on second reading in the Senate. And so expecting when the legislature reconvenes that those will likely continue to move and become enrolled. SB 801, which is the board's sunset bill, that bill extends the board sunset date to January 1, 2026. It also modernizes and clarifies the scope of practice for MFTs. That Camp's bill was put into SB 801. And then also it serves as the board's omnibus bill to make minor technical changes. That bill is moving along. It's in the Assembly Appropriations Committee right now. So that's its last committee that it has to clear. And let's see, in terms of AB 468, the emotional support animals bill, the board took an opposed position on that bill in July. The board, Steve and I had a pretty productive meeting with the sponsors of that bill, and they are going to present at the September 10th board meeting. So that's pretty much where everything, all the major things are right now. So I'll open it up for any questions.
You know, Roseanne, I'm really glad that the practice setting definition is moving forward. You know, it takes so long, you know, through the discussion of the committee, through the PNA, and then even that, you know, we have that legislation packet ready to go. There's still always issues. And so, you know, I'm just really glad that, you know, all the work that we have done in the past 3-4 years finally is coming through the fruition. And so, you know, yeah,
that'll be a nice one. And it did get delayed a year due to COVID. So it'll be nice to hopefully finally have that one come into play.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, yeah, you know, so this is like, you know, the practice setting, you know, it's a lot of the hard work, you know, from the committee, you know, from the board members. So, you know, I'm very excited and hopefully, you know, this will be signed, you know, in September, you know, more to come. Thank you so much, Roseanne. And so let's, any question from the board members? Okay, any questions from the public?
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, you can click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field and submit that to our panelists, or simply click on the hand icon next to your name to raise your hand. And seeing none, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, moderator. Okay, so let's move on to our next update, which is the board's rulemaking proposals, and I believe is Christy. Christy, I think you're muted.
It says she's not muted. Let's see here.
It appears that Christy's having some audio issues. If you can just bear with us for a moment.
Yes.
All right, Christy, I've promoted your new connection. If you can unmute your microphone and test it.
Mm-mm. Nope.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. I didn't. Oh, hang on. I'm gonna leave. Okay, I
There you
exited
go.
out of the other event so we don't get the feedback. So you can guys hear me okay now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. It was showing as that I was not muted, but the little green bar that shows when you're talking on the microphone was not moving. So it was like frozen, I think. So anyway, going to give an update, and thanks for bearing with me. Give you an update on our regulation proposals, the different status for each. So the first is our enforcement process regulations that will result in updates to the board's disciplinary process, updating our uniform standards. And as you all know, this has been pending for a long time. We had to hold it because of AB 2138, which was approved in December 2020. And then we got a new probation manager in our unit, and so we wanted to give her some time to get on board and take a look at what else might need to change, since it's been so long that since we had started looking at this, we know that additional changes have been identified. So we're starting to work internally on making suggested amendments to that originally proposed language. So we're hoping to bring that, actually it says to the board for review, but it's going to come back to policy and advocacy first, now that I'm looking at this. So the second rulemaking proposal is our supervision-related requirements, and we are in our second 15-day public comment period, which was originally slated to end on July 29th. However, our email subscribers list email was delayed in going out, so we actually had to extend that comment period until August 14th. Which is fine. If we get any comments, they were not going to be considered. They had to be considered by the board, and that meeting is not until early September. So it actually doesn't really impact anything, fortunately. So and there's such minor changes, I really doubt we're going to get any comments, but you never know. And so once we deal with that, we're working with OAL on getting these finalized, and we're very much hoping they'll take effect January 1st of 2022. And there is a couple of phased-in components that take effect a little bit later. So, and then on our continuing education and additional training requirements regulations, they are still in the DCA initial review process. They've been there for quite a while. We had a switch over in our regulation attorneys, and it's taken some time for them to get through that process, and there's been delays on my side as well, and going back and forth. There's been a lot of complicated discussions on some of it. So we do have some language changes that are going to be coming back these are going to go straight to the board because it wound up not being anything that significant. So those additional language changes are going back to the board in September of this year to take a look at. And then it'll continue through initial review. So we're hoping that last piece will go pretty quickly once the board takes a look at it. So, but it does need to go through agency during initial review, and so it will at least take a month, possibly a little longer, before we can do our initial 45-day public comment. So late 2021. And then the last reg proposal has been hanging out for a while. These are minor changes to examination waiting periods, professional corporations, and accrediting agencies and equivalent degrees. It's still being prepared for the initial review process. I've been trying to squeeze it in. Again, these are minor changes, so it hasn't been the highest of priorities, but I am hoping to squeeze it in fairly soon. And I think that's everything.
Thank you so much, Christy. This is really wonderful, knowing that finally, the supervision part of the bill is getting closer for implementation. Yes, it's
Oh,
been
yes.
so long, 5 years since its original approval by the board.
Right.
Yes. So any comments for the board from the board members? No, I see none. And then how about public comments?
This is the moderator. We've again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment, you may utilize that panel by clicking on the Q&A icon on your screen, typing comment into the text field and submitting that to our panelists, or simply by locating the hand icon next to your name and clicking on that to raise your hand. And I am not seeing any requests at this time. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, moderator. So at this point, I think we're coming to our agenda for comments, for the public comments portion. So any agenda, let's see, that would be the public comments for item not on the agenda. So I think, Jen, you were about to make some comments, right? Inviting you to join us.
And Jen Alley, you may unmute your line.
Good morning. This is Jennifer Alley with the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, CAMP. Thank you for this opportunity. And, I wasn't, we kind of internally, CAMP went back and forth on which committee this should come to. So we're just going to dump it in policy and advocacy. Lucky you, I'm sure you're excited. But we're just wondering if BBS has an opinion on life coaches. And specifically, are life coaches considered professional services? As defined in section 13401A and 13405 of the Court Code. And, can life coaches provide services as employees of an MFT corporation? Are there any guidelines for life coaches to determine when a client should be referred to a licensed professional? Are there any concerns that BBS may have with the employment of life coaches at MFT, LPCC, or LCSW corporations? Are there consumer risks with any of these arrangements? If so, is there any possible remedy for BBS? And are there any supervision or record keeping requirements for these individuals employed? And so it's just something that's, come on our radar. And so we have a lot of questions. And we're just wondering if you guys have any opinions, and if you don't, could you develop some and maybe publish something? So I think that's all that I have on that, but it's something that we're definitely concerned with. And so we'd like to kind of have some sort of conversation with you guys, mostly from the, aspect of consumer protection. So that is all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jen. Very, very good, comments. So, anything else from the public?
I'm not seeing any other requests at this time.
So wonderful. Then so please close the Q&A panel, and I will be moving forward for the next agenda item. Is the suggestions for future agenda items. Board members? I see little head shake. So okay, we don't have any suggestions for the future agenda items. And
Madam Chair, I do see Roseanne's hand up. Roseanne, did you?
Sorry, I just forgot to lower it earlier.
It's okay.
awesome. Okay, so no further suggested agenda items. Then I think we can move to our favorite part of the agenda, which is adjournment, 10 a.m. Thank you so much, board members, for a very efficient and effective discussion. And we will see you at 11 o'clock for the telehealth committee meeting, and you will see me again and some of us again. Thank you so much, and
Thank you, Christina.
you're
Thank you.
very welcome.
This was the shortest on record, I guess.
Thank you, everyone.
No, we
Okay.
like that way.
Bye. Okay.
Bye.